A dry crack split the air, Mexican dust erupting from desert floor, and deadly silence. That night in Tepoztlán, cameras weren't rolling, but Hollywood came within heartbeats of witnessing its first execution. Steve McQueen was about to pay the price for insulting a king's honor in 4/10 of a second. Yul Brynner stood motionless in the moonlit canyon corner outside the Tepoztlán film camp, his silhouette carved against ancient stone walls that had witnessed centuries of violence. But nothing as coldly precise as what was about to unfold between two men whose different definitions of honor would collide in the most dangerous 40 seconds in Hollywood history. April 1960, 12:15 past midnight, when the desert wind carried only coyote calls and the distant echo of crew members sleeping in trailers that provided no protection from the kind of authentic confrontation that emerged when alcohol dissolved diplomatic restraints and revealed the vast difference between performed toughness and genuine lethality that operated according to principles most actors never encountered, because their experience with real violence remained safely theoretical until circumstances demanded immediate education about what authentic authority. If you're fascinated by untold stories where Hollywood's most dangerous confrontations revealed the lethal difference between screen heroics and authentic capability that could end careers or lives in fractions of seconds, subscribe for more hidden encounters where carefully constructed personas met capabilities that operated beyond normal human limitations when circumstances eliminated safety protocols and demanded immediate rather than diplomatic resolution of conflicts. The Magnificent Seven location had been chosen for its authentic isolation, where Mexican desert provided the kind of harsh environment that tested both actors and characters beyond normal Hollywood comfort levels, though the production's security protocols couldn't protect performers from conflicts that emerged when personal pride collided with professional competition under conditions where alcohol and exhaustion dissolved civilized restraints. Steve McQueen prowled the canyon edge with restless energy that characterized men whose success had convinced them that conventional boundaries didn't apply to their behavior, his recent achievements having created confidence that bordered on dangerous arrogance when applied to situations where his rebel persona might encounter opposition that operated according to different standards than those he had successfully challenged throughout his career. At 30 years old, McQueen possessed natural charisma that made audiences believe they were witnessing authentic American rebellion rather than carefully calculated performance, his screen presence having established him as Hollywood's most convincing portrayal of characters whose independence was measured through willingness to challenge authority regardless of consequences. But McQueen's confidence that night had been amplified by alcohol and the kind of professional frustration that emerged when sharing screen time with performers whose exotic backgrounds provided automatic audience fascination that his own American authenticity had to work considerably harder to match, creating resentment that manifested through increasingly personal observations about colleagues whose success threatened his psychological equilibrium. "You know what I think about these foreign actors who come here pretending they're something special?" McQueen announced to the desert darkness with volume calculated to ensure his target would overhear every word. "They show up with their mysterious pasts and exotic accents, but underneath all that royal mystique and aristocratic posturing, they're probably just refugees from whatever European disaster zone they crawled out of." The assessment revealed McQueen's fundamental misunderstanding of what kind of man he was targeting through continued disrespect. His confidence apparently based on assumptions about American superiority that didn't account for the possibility that authentic aristocracy might respond to insults about family origins through methods that his rebellious experience had never prepared him to handle. Probably came from some circus family that got run out of Europe for being freaks or criminals, McQueen announced with increasing boldness, his voice carrying across the canyon in ways that ensured maximum humiliation for someone whose exotic background had made him successful in roles that McQueen apparently believed should be reserved for performers whose qualifications were based on authentic American credentials. But what McQueen apparently didn't understand was that his assessment was being overheard by someone whose family history included experiences that had nothing to do with theatrical entertainment, and everything to do with survival under circumstances where insults about ancestry carried consequences that extended far beyond wounded pride into territory where authentic honor was defended through methods that most actors never encountered. The insult hung in the desert air like challenge that couldn't be ignored without permanent damage to honor that had been earned through methods extending beyond normal human experience, transforming casual disrespect into declaration of war that demanded immediate response through demonstration rather than verbal negotiation. That's when the canyon atmosphere shifted in ways that desert wildlife recognized as prelude to violence, creating the kind of absolute stillness that preceded encounters where survival instincts overcame civilized restraints. And authentic lethality was demonstrated through methods that separated theoretical discussions about capability from practical education. Yul's movement seemed to violate normal physical laws, not the flowing precision that characterized martial arts demonstrations, but the explosive efficiency that emerged when survival instincts eliminated hesitation and circumstances demanded immediate results that would establish permanent hierarchies through methods that couldn't be negotiated or compromised. The Colt appeared in his hand before McQueen's alcohol-impaired reflexes could process the beginning of movement that had already concluded with devastating finality, the weapon materializing as though it had teleported from holster to firing position through mechanisms that human perception couldn't adequately track when authentic capability operated at speeds that exceeded normal human limitations. 0.4 of a second, the time required for sound to travel approximately 130 feet through desert air. The time required for human consciousness to register visual stimuli and begin processing motor responses through neural pathways that assumed safety margins and reaction opportunities that didn't exist when authentic lethality operated according to principles that most people never encountered outside carefully controlled entertainment applications. The hammer's click as it locked into firing position created sound that seemed to slow time itself, metal against metal creating acoustic punctuation that made everyone within hearing distance suddenly aware that they were witnessing something that transcended normal Hollywood confrontation and entered territory where genuine rather than theatrical violence was being demonstrated. McQueen's rebellious confidence evaporated like desert moisture under direct sunlight as he found himself staring down a barrel that was aligned with mathematical precision between his eyes, the weapon held with steady authority that revealed training developed through circumstances where such positioning was calculated to provide maximum psychological impact while maintaining options for immediate escalation. The silence that followed was complete and profound, broken only by desert wind that continued moving sand around motionless figures who had become tableau representing collision between manufactured rebellion and authentic royal authority. "Mr. McQueen," Yul said quietly, his accented voice carrying controlled authority that made whispered words more threatening than shouted challenges. "You have insulted my family, my ancestry, and my honor, through comments that reveal your fundamental ignorance of what constitutes unforgivable disrespect when directed toward bloodlines that have been proven through trials that your experience cannot comprehend." The assessment was delivered without anger or emotional display, simply professional evaluation from someone whose authority had just been established through direct demonstration rather than verbal assertion that could be questioned when circumstances revealed authentic capability. McQueen stood frozen with weapon trained on his forehead, his manufactured toughness completely neutralized by contact with genuine lethality that operated according to principles. His rebellious experience had never prepared him to understand or counter through conventional methods. The trigger moved with deliberate precision, creating mechanical sequence that transformed potential energy into kinetic force through processes that had been repeated countless times, under circumstances where accuracy determined survival rather than visual appeal, for audiences who would never face situations requiring similar competence. The gunshot cracked across the canyon like thunder, muzzle flash creating momentary illumination that revealed expressions frozen in positions that would be remembered by anyone who witnessed the encounter as education about what authentic lethality looked like when it was applied with surgical precision rather than dramatic gesture. But the bullet didn't find McQueen's skull as expected trajectory might have suggested based on weapon alignment, instead impacting desert floor directly between his boots, with precision that required calculations extending beyond normal marksmanship into territory where authentic capability was demonstrated through methods that provided maximum psychological impact. Sand erupted around McQueen's feet as lead met earth with finality that created visual punctuation for lesson about what happened when casual disrespect encountered genuine honor that was defended through methods most actors never witnessed outside carefully controlled entertainment applications. The bullet went into the ground, Mr. McQueen. Yul continued with gentle precision that carried more menace than dramatic threats could achieve. But your disrespect has been buried there with it, along with any illusions you might have maintained about what constitutes acceptable behavior when discussing matters that extend beyond your experience. The weapon remained trained on McQueen's position while educational assessment was delivered through conversational tone that made whispered instruction more devastating than shouted commands. Understanding that some lessons required permanent psychological impact rather than merely temporary intimidation. Sweat that had nothing to do with desert temperature began forming on McQueen's forehead as he processed implications of witnessing authentic rather than manufactured lethality, demonstrated through methods that his rebellious background had never prepared him to handle when circumstances eliminated diplomatic alternatives. If you ever speak of my family again, Yul concluded with controlled authority that made final warnings seem like casual conversation despite carrying undertones that suggested permanent consequences. That precision will be applied to target that will provide considerably more permanent educational value than desert sand can offer. The Colt disappeared back into its holster with the same fluid precision that had characterized its appearance, mechanical sounds creating acoustic punctuation that marked end of educational demonstration while serving as reminder that such capability remained available should circumstances require additional instruction. Years later, when asked about memorable encounters with fellow performers whose capabilities had exceeded initial expectations, McQueen would describe his interaction with Yul Brynner as professionally educational, though he never provided specific details about what had occurred in the Tepoztlán Canyon, or why his subsequent approach to competitive commentary had become notably more circumspect. I learned that there are different types of authority, and recognizing the difference between what you can challenge safely and what you should leave alone regardless of personal frustration is essential for survival in situations that extend beyond normal entertainment industry boundaries. McQueen would tell interviewers curious about his evolving perspective on authentic versus manufactured rebellion. The psychological impact of standing at the wrong end of genuine lethality would resonate through McQueen's career in ways that no amount of subsequent success could completely overcome. The rebel who had built his reputation on challenging authority had discovered that some authorities were defended through methods that his experience couldn't categorize and his training couldn't counter when circumstances eliminated diplomatic alternatives and demanded immediate recognition of authentic rather than theoretical superiority. Industry insiders who had witnessed fragments of the canyon encounter began sharing carefully edited versions of the story that emphasized the importance of professional respect while omitting the specific details of how close Hollywood had come to witnessing its first execution, understanding that complete truth might damage both participants. Commercial value while serving as educational example for other performers whose confidence might exceed their actual qualifications when tested against genuine rather than manufactured authority. The bullet hole in the desert sand would remain visible for weeks after the production moved to other locations, serving as permanent reminder for crew members who understood they had witnessed something that transcended normal entertainment industry conflicts and entered territory where authentic violence had been demonstrated through methods that most Hollywood observers never encountered outside carefully controlled stunt work that emphasized safety over genuine capability. Directors who worked with McQueen on subsequent rebel roles noted that his approach to challenging authority had become notably more calculated, as though the experience of witnessing authentic lethality had taught him to distinguish between situations where his rebellious persona was appropriate and those that might require capabilities he didn't possess when circumstances moved beyond theoretical confrontation into practical demonstrations of competence that operated according to different standards than entertainment industry preparation provided. The canyon encounter would become legend within industry circles where stories about authentic versus manufactured rebellion were shared as educational examples for performers whose own confidence in their capabilities might exceed their actual qualifications when tested against opposition that operated according to practical rather than theatrical standards, though the complete details were never fully documented in official reports or publicity materials that might affect either participant's commercial appeal. The scent of gunpowder that had hung in the desert air for minutes after the demonstration would be remembered by everyone present as olfactory punctuation for education about what authentic authority smelled like when it was applied with surgical precision rather than dramatic gesture. The cordite residue serving as chemical reminder that some capabilities extended beyond normal human limitations through training that most actors never encountered. But those who witnessed the canyon encounter understood they had seen something that revealed fundamental truths about the difference between performed toughness and authentic lethality, and why certain demonstrations left permanent impressions that affected all subsequent interactions between men whose respect was earned through methods that transcended normal entertainment industry protocols, and entered territory where genuine authority was measured through standards that most people never encountered and couldn't survive when circumstances demanded practical rather than theoretical validation of claimed capabilities. The moonlight that had illuminated the confrontation continued casting shadows long after both men had returned to their separate trailers, though the psychological shadows created by witnessing authentic rather than manufactured violence would persist considerably longer than natural lighting conditions, affecting everyone who understood they had observed something that revealed what genuine capability looked like when it was demonstrated through methods that entertainment industry preparation couldn't duplicate. Some men perform roles, others become the role itself. That night McQueen learned he was just an actor, while Yul proved he was truly a king. Star's Secret Logs presents